is if I vote for you, and I will, and you get to Washington, would you then stand up against robbing Social Security for those of us who worked of our lives, and like this gentleman, I too was in the Air Force for many, many years, and we paid our dues. We paid our dues. And I don't want, like this gentleman, I don't want the government to come along and say, okay, I'm going to take out Social Security and pay for something else for people who don't contribute to it. So the question is, would you stand for putting a lock on the Social Security money box?
The question is, would I support putting a lock on the Social Security money box? And the answer to that is yes. Unfortunately, had we done that 30 years ago, 28 years ago, 26 years ago,
right,
2018, just bring it on down, every 2 years. Had we done that, Social Security would be in much better shape than it is today. Had we reinvested that money and gotten the yield that many folks were able to get with their private money for Social Security would be a very solid system today. So I would have to say yes to that. It is not going to be easy. The government has gotten so used to taking the money. And 2010, as I understand it, marks the first year that we will actually send more money out than we take in Social Security. So it may be closing the barn door after the horse is out, but I will do my best to put a lockbox on the Social Security money.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
I was at a meeting with Congressman Phil Rowe of Tennessee on Tuesday, and one of his major concerns was that you get elected. That was outstanding.
Well, I appreciate him saying that. I did not know that he was saying that, but I really appreciate it.
He wants help in Washington. But I have two comments. One is that, in my opinion, Mr. Boucher is a lover, not a fighter. And the other, when you get to Washington, I'm not expecting Nancy to be in the power that she's in now, but will you deliver this to her?
The question, as you may have heard, would I deliver this to Nancy Pelosi personally as the Constitution of the United States? I don't know that she'll let me in the office. But if she does let me into her office, I will deliver a copy of the United States Constitution to her. Thank you. Let's take the gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hands. We'll go to this gentleman in the back. And whenever the organizers want me to stop talking, just come down and yank me. Otherwise, I'm going to keep answering questions. Yes.
My name is John Roach, and I'm from Rural Retreat. And I've been reading the books and doing a lot of study on this fire tax bill. And I don't know how much you're familiar with it. Probably a lot going on and you all read about it. And right there, everything has been mentioned in here. If we could get something like that on, and several calls, we got a lot of calls behind it now. Pushing this, and we did enough. I think that right there would take care of a lot of problems in this country. It would bring the jobs back to this country. Instead of the government taking the money out of our checks, before we see it, we would spend our own money. And there would be no withholding or nothing like that. So I would like to think that if you were elected, and I hope that you are, that you would look into this. And I'm just going to ask you if you would walk into that.
The question is, would I look into the fair tax? I would tell you that I would look into it. I am looking into it. I am not going to tell you this evening that I would 100% vote for it. There are a lot of questions that I have. I'm on the campaign trail, and I want, before I commit, I want to make sure that I read everything that I need to read. One of the problems we have in Washington is they commit to things, as Bill said. It might sound good, but then you get into the fine print. I want to make sure I take a look at everything. That being said, I will tell you, we must have a different tax system than the one we have. It is too complex. It is too complicated. When honest citizens try to figure out what they're supposed to do, and they can't, government is out of control. So we do need a different tax system. I don't know whether the fair tax is exactly what I was for, but I will look into it and other ideas that will reform and make more simple our tax laws in these United States. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll keep working forward.
The reason I'm here is that I believe that the Tea Party people are people that are disillusioned with government in general. They don't necessarily, what we know pretty much, that we don't love the Democrats, but we don't necessarily love the Republicans either, because we've seen what the Republicans do when they come to office. This is what concerns me. I'm looking for people that have the integrity to do what they say they are going to do when they get into office. So my question to you is, number one, will you use the Constitution as a guide when you vote for the bills that come up? Number two, will you vote for your constituents before your party affiliation?
Wait a minute, can you hold number 3? You get too far down the line, I might not remember number 1. No, I won't forget. Let me answer those first two first. Number 1 is, would I use the Constitution to guide me on votes on bills? Absolutely, no question about it. Number 2, will I vote my constituents over my party? Absolutely. I am elected not to be a part of a Republican majority if I am elected, but to be the representative of the Fighting Ninth of Virginia. And, you know, if my constituents need something like cap and trade, which they don't need, but if my constituents feel strongly about an issue, then I see it as my job as a legislator, and I've always felt this way. My job, if I think that my constituents don't fully appreciate all the nuances, my job is to vote with my constituents and then go back and explain to them why maybe we ought to take a look next year at this proposal and see if they've changed their minds. But the bottom line is, when you're in a legislative body, you only have maybe 5 or 10 issues that come up in a single year. Now, this year may be an exception because we're at a crisis point. But generally speaking, 5 or 10 issues a year. Would you agree with that, Bill, where your constituents feel strongly? There are a lot of issues that they respect you and trust your opinion on and hope that you get it right. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't get them right. But we do our best. But when the constituents are clear on what they think that we ought to do, and they're my constituents who have entrusted me with their vote, I'm not sent up there to vote how Morgan Griffith thinks. I'm sent up there to be the representative in the House of Representatives for the 9th. And so the constituents come first when they feel strongly about an issue. Clearly, cap and trade was one of those issues. Clearly, the current congressman didn't listen to the constituents. Now, that being said, you had a question number 3 and maybe a 4 and 5.
I could probably ask a lot of questions, but one
Yes,
would be, would you vote to repeal that health bill?
I issued a press release either the day after or the first business day after that was passed, saying that I would vote for the repeal. Let me tell you, though, President Obama has the power of the veto pen. Even if a lot of like-minded people get elected this year, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or Independent, who would vote in the House of Representatives to repeal, we will not have the votes to override a veto. So what we have to do is use the power given to Congress and the balance of powers, which is to control the purse strings, and we will have to kill the bill by not funding. All the way in the back, and I'm not going to forget you. And I see you over here too, ma'am. Let's go all the way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm here in Chilhowie, and I'm in Dollar, Virginia, and I live in Southwest Virginia. But I have a couple of questions. Number 1 is, what is your feelings on the tax bill as far as whether we should lower it and let it go, or should we continue the taxes as they are now? The other question is, what is your thoughts on card check?
Card check was the second question card check?
Yes.
I'm slightly losing my hearing in one ear, so I want to make sure I had that right. The first question was on taxes. I have always fought in Virginia to keep our taxes relatively low. I will fight in Washington to make sure that we send no more money than is necessary to run the government and run those things that we ought to. In regard to specific taxes that may need to be lowered, we'll certainly look at that. I do believe that at this moment in history, we should not be raising taxes one iota, and then we should figure out ways to cut government so we can lower taxes in the future. That's what I believe needs to be done. That's what I've done as a member of the Virginia House of Representatives.
You would vote against taking off the taxes that are due that have been passed.
Oh, she's talking about the Bush tax?
The sunset on the taxes, yes, ma'am, I would vote to extend those. I believe that it helps business. It's easy to vilify and say, oh, this goes to the rich folks. Bottom line is that's where the jobs come from. We need to make sure that we are creating jobs, not encouraging people to take their money overseas or offshore. We need to encourage businesses to come into Virginia. I'm proud to stand here today. There's always this debate, and some people it's kind of interesting. In one survey, I think it was MSNBC, it may have been CNBC, Virginia slipped from #1 to #2 best place to do business in, and there was all this, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. Today, another group, and I got it on, you know what group it was? I had it came in on my BlackBerry, said Virginia was had the best business climate in the nation. But as one fellow said during the nomination fight, he said, it doesn't do any good for Virginia to be the best place in the nation to do business when the United States of America is not the best place in the world to do business. We need to have some controls. We don't want to go back and treat workers like the Chinese do. But we need to make the United States of America a better place to do business instead of encouraging our own people to take the jobs overseas, because it's not just a small difference in the cost of doing business here, it's a gigantic difference in doing business here because of the layer after layer after layer of government regulation. So yes, I would vote to extend the tax program that we have now. They did generate jobs when they first came in, and I'm afraid that part of the reason that we're not coming out of this recession as quickly as some have thought is that many businesses are concerned about hiring new people and investing for fear that